There we go, Ashlee. Here we are. So welcome to our LinkedIn Live. We'll see who starts showing up in the chat here. So when you join us, feel free to put a comment in the chat. I'm Dina Simon, and I am a fractional chief people officer for Celarity. I've been partnered with Celarity for about 7 years. And also, not that, Ashlee, you've been at Celarity, just celebrated your 3rd year.
Almost 3.
Almost 3?
2.5.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm aging you. But Ashlee and I have had the awesome opportunity to work together for the past 7 years at some of my other clients. We both led an HR department where I'm certified in also HR. I'm certified in DiSC, and Ashlee went through certification with me. So as an authorized partner, we're here to just talk about our love for DiSC and how it has shown up with us working together. Also as friends, how our DiSC shows up, and share a little bit more with you guys about what being a DISC means. So even if you haven't taken a DiSC assessment, you'll learn a little bit more about DiSC today. So Ashlee, thank you for co-hosting this LinkedIn Live with me.
Yeah, happy to, especially for you, of course. Over the last 7 years, we've been super close.
We have
through multiple different companies. So always nice to chat and reconnect, but would love for people to throw in their DiSC profile if they're comfortable in the comments, just for curiosity. Kind of fun to see.
Exactly. It's super fun to see. So yeah, so if you want to just throw in what your DiSC is, if you know what it is, and then we'll be answering questions as well and make this as conversational as we can. So Ashlee, you have there that you're a D in your title under your name there. So talk to us a little bit about where your DiSC shows up and what you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think we have a fun graphic too to pop up. There it is. So pretty solidly in the D category. I think I've taken like probably 5 or 6 DiSCs throughout the years. So have kind of fluctuated a bit between a DI and just a D, but not a ton of fluctuation. I actually just took this last week, so it's pretty fresh.
Yeah.
But you can see kind of my motivators are challenge, results, and action. That's kind of where I really thrive. My motivators are implementing ideas, having authority, achieving results, working towards challenging goals. So those are some of the things that, again, I really kind of strive for.
Yeah, and I love that you took it again. So we talked about that because that's one of the questions people always ask is they say, how often should I take my DiSC? So the rule of thumb is you don't really need to take it outside of maybe like a 5-7 year period to see if something has changed. Unless there's like a major life event that's happened or major job change that's happened. And we talked about it because there was a major life event. There was something called COVID. And when you last took it, we were smack in COVID where you were, locked down, working from home every day. So you said, hey, I wonder if it would change a little bit. And I think it changed just a smidge, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a DI for some years, like probably 3 or 4. Took it in like 2021, beginning of that, and I just had changed to just a D. So again, kind of COVID lockdown, maybe a factor, not seeing as many people, not being, at a ton of events in the office every day, kind of shifted my, priorities really.
Yeah. And do you think too, because when you were more on that, like when you had more I and D, and now you're more firmly in D, you've also changed. You were in an HR department. You were a in-house recruiter for a company. Now, as a senior recruiter at Celarity, your job is focused on recruiting and not all the other HR generalist stuff. So it's also super focused. Do you think that has impacted it?
Yeah, that could totally be it. And just, I think, with being a D, one of the things is, operating at a very fast pace. And as an agency recruiter, obviously operating at a fast pace and, being quick is kind of the name of the game. And, just kind of moved more into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And we've got some Ezra's on. Hello, Ezra, as a CS. Ian, a D with some CS. Sarah, I think you are an ID. Emma's an S. Julia SI. Love this. So love that you guys know a little bit about your profiles. So feel free to ask some questions if you want to. So let's share where mine is. So you are there at the D, and then mine is up just a little bit more. So I also have taken it a few times over the years. So I've been working with DiSC for 20 years. And when I first took it, I was more where you are, firmly in D. And then I have navigated some. So I have my own consulting company. And so I think when I moved in that direction, I moved more to I when I left my big corporate role. And so I fluctuate a little bit between ID and DI, depending on when I take it. So right now, this one is DI. And just also to explain to people, so Ashlee was just D because she was firmly in like that center of that piece of the pie. And me being on the circle, you can see a little bit, I've got that D, but I also have almost as much I. And then I have shading. So not everybody has shading. So I kind of have that fourth preference when I took the assessment. So similar to Ashlee, the results and action. And then I move more into the enthusiasm. And then if I have the opportunity, I love to collaborate. So that's just kind of a fourth preference that I have. And we would love to share, and then we'll go to some questions, and we've got some other things. But for anybody that hasn't taken DiSC before, there is 2 kind of easy questions that you can ask yourself. And Ashlee and I can speak a little bit to this as well. So when you look at the circle, there is these words. So active. So the top of the circle, if you ask yourself, am I fast paced or a little bit more calm, slower pace, more reserved? So I call it pace and tempo. If you ask yourself, gosh, am I fast active or a little bit slower, maybe more reflective? That's kind of the first decision point. And if you say fast or active, which Ashlee and I would say, then you're either a D or I. And then if you say a more calm, more reflective, then you're going to be in that C or S. And then the second question would be, am I more skeptical or am I more accepting? And so skeptical puts you as a D or C, and the accepting is I or S. So that's one way you can kind of, if you haven't taken the assessment, kind of think through that. So somebody who says, oh my gosh, I'm active and skeptical, that would be like Ashlee as a D. If somebody says, oh, I'm super fast and active, but I actually feel I'm more accepting when things happen or with people or situations versus skeptical, then you might be an I, right? Like you would think through that. And then on the C and the S's, which Ashlee and I will talk about how we love working with C and S's because there are opposites. If you say, I feel like I'm more calm and reflective, but I'm more accepting versus skeptical, then you're in the S. And if you say I'm more calm and reflective, but I think I'm skeptical, then you'd be in the C. And there is no right or wrong, right? So they're all good, and they're all good. These are your superpowers. So taking a DiSC assessment really is understanding who am I and where are my preferences and how do I show up? And then it's super fun to know then your coworkers, right? Like know yourself and then your coworkers, where they show up. So you know where you communicate similarly and then where there are differences. So Jamie, if you want to take that slide down, we'll just kind of talk through. So Ashlee, what are some of the things that you can think through where our styles, because we are similar?
Yeah, we're almost nearly identical. I was looking at this yesterday. I think our only difference is really I'm a little bit more on the skeptical side and you're a little bit more on the accepting side, which is a super nice balance. But we still like to, and we know this about each other, operate really quickly, which is where having those friends in the C and S category really come in as that help for us. Like, hey, take a second. This isn't 100% accurate, or you got a few errors in there.
Yep.
So that's always a nice thing. I work with someone that's more in that lower quadrant right now. And she's always quick to be like, hey, you missed something right here, or, you should fix this. I'm like, yep, you're right. I got this done in like 5 minutes. So I definitely need that help.
Exactly. And we love that help too.
Mm-hmm.
So So I actually thought of something this morning when I was thinking about you and I working together too, to kind of to share. So if you and I were going to hire somebody, this is a real story. If we were going to hire somebody that we were going to work with, I would lean into a little bit more just my gut on the person. And you, because you are a little bit more skeptical,
Okay.
you actually, and this is one of your superpowers, you are super quick and fast to do research on people and find out things that we wouldn't maybe know about the person, to also share like the full picture, to say, hey, I don't know if this is going to actually be a great fit because of these things.
Yep.
So you, with that skeptical piece, but super highly results driven, super high standards, that's where we have collaborated and we've made decisions to say, yeah, maybe you're right. So where I would be quick to make a decision more on my gut, you would bring more, kind of facts into it to say, hey, I did this quick research and let's have a conversation about it.
For sure. I think it's important to note too that, even if you are a C or an S, doesn't mean you can't be quick and be fast. Right now there are recruiters on our team that are in that CS category, and they're some of the quickest people on our team. So it's just kind of playing into your strengths and not kind of saying, well, I'm this, so I guess I'm not fast, but really just playing into your strengths and understanding them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we've got, I know even on our team, but also Ezra is a recruiter out in the world and he's got the CS. So there is no perfect, right? It is what you are. And then how do you use those traits as your superpower? And some of the C's and the S's, like we talked about, they're going to do more research. They're going to do things differently. So it's just utilizing what the process is, and figuring out how you bring your talents to the team. Love that. So I'd like to talk about where you talked a little bit about your motivators. Talk about your stressors. What are some of your stressors?
For sure. Following strict rules is one of mine as a D. A big one for me personally is inefficient procedures. I like being super efficient. I love to help kind of create better efficiencies in different procedures.
Yeah.
Another one is routine tasks, kind of doing the same thing over and over.
Yep.
Another thing is just lacking independence and autonomy as well,
Right.
which as a recruiter, you have a ton of independence and autonomy. So fits super well.
Yeah, I love that. You and I worked with somebody who actually, her dot was almost the exact same of mine. And so this also goes back to just, again, our superpowers, knowing who we are, and it doesn't dictate necessarily what jobs we're in. You and I are similar to her, but her dot was like right where mine is. And she was an accounting manager. And so as a high DI, you would think that maybe a job trait wouldn't be somebody who was head down in numbers, but she was. And so she showed up, in life with high energy, but she actually loved in her job to get heads down and work by herself and analyze data. So that goes back to it's a piece of the puzzle. So the reason I love working with C's and S's is because they are different from us. So because we do move so fast, we can make errors, we can move fast. We also can be overpowering to people, right?
Little blunt.
Yep. And so they balance us out to say, hey, hold on, wait a minute. If we ever needed to have somebody spend the time to really do the analysis and get the data for us, like that would be where we'd love to bring our C friends in. And so some of the examples that I give with clients that I've worked with is anybody can come up with a big idea. You can be in any area of the quadrants. But when you have a big idea or you want to move something forward, like a new initiative within a company, it's awesome to throw it on the table. And it is great to give it to the I's, who are going to have a bunch of enthusiasm and ideate through things. And then give it to the D's to make some decisions on, okay, from a results and action standpoint, is this something that ties to our values and whatever, should we do it? And then where the C's and the S's come in, typically the C's then need to look at it to say, okay, does this really make business sense, or are these people crazy? Does it make business sense? How could we do this? Will we get an ROI on it? And then give it to the S's. And so we could talk about our S's that we get to work with at Celarity. How do we market it? How is it going to impact the people? So they're very conscientious on, if we do this, how is it going to impact people? So the S's are very much about people, customer service. Will this serve them well? So there are ways, within a group of people to actually take a situation and throw it out there and have those different minds think through things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing that I love is, when we look at cultures and teams, I've seen, and you've done some of the work with me, where we have done a DiSC assessment for 10 people. And then you look at where the quadrants are, how many people sit in the boxes. And over the years, based on hiring, like how it can change, and then how the culture of the team can actually change as well. So you think of some of the people that we've worked with, and when they've left and different people come in and they have different DiSC styles, how it just changes the culture.
Yeah. And I know you've had a couple of stories you shared about companies that have had 60, 70% in one quadrant. And eventually that shifted over time and just created a more kind of harmonious, well-functioning kind of team.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So there was one recently that I did for a team of 10 leaders around the table, and there was 0 I. So there was a good representation of the D and the S and the C, but no I. And not that that's a bad thing, but hey, if you had one or two people that had that I, it would be a more balanced, diverse way of thinking through things. Yeah, yeah. So it is fun to see that. So we'd love to see questions in the chat. So there's a LinkedIn user that says, I appreciate that it may take more of my energy to work out of my lesser referred quadrant. Yeah, so energy. So one of the things that I always tell my S and C friends is, when you're in a room with like D's and D's and I's, that when we also talk with our hands, I's do. So that's another way you can tell if somebody's an I, right?
Yep.
It is our job to make sure that we're respectful of those that are at the table with us. And so if we see somebody that is more reserved and feels that maybe they can't get a word in edgewise, that we do our part to say, hey, I'm going to stop talking, and get the feedback from the other people that are sitting at the table. That's an important trait that D's and I's need to learn. And then the S's and the C's feeling comfortable to say, hey, hello, I do have something to say. Can I get that word in edgewise? And know that. So Ashlee, from other traits for you as a D that you think that you've had, success with in working with people on a team, how you've reflected on how your style shows up.
Yeah. I think kind of as a D, even I's as well, obviously the innovation piece, kind of being an ideas person, and being in those meetings, coming up with different kind of fun, unique ideas on how to do things is certainly helpful. But then obviously having some people in that meeting and on that team that are in that C and S category to be like, that's a great idea. Let's execute that.
Exactly.
And let's get a plan together. Because I'm not the first person to be like, I've got a whole plan, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I know Jamie had provided us with some thought starters too. So let me just look at a couple of these. So with somebody who has that S style, so actually, let me share this. So on the leadership team at Celarity, we didn't have anybody that had that S style. And when we brought Jamie on our team, who is high S, just again, how immediately those team meetings changed because she brought just a different perspective to the table. And I think because there were so many D and I styles, we were super excited to have her, that steadiness, the opportunity for her to think through things, the planning component. The calmness that she brought was super amazing. So I loved adding, the steadiness to the team. The C, conscientious style. Again, you talked about that, like how a detailed plan, how can we have a detailed plan on something that needs to be executed? This conscientious style, that C, they're going to be all about pulling the data together. I mentioned it earlier, like, can we do this? Does it make sense? Is there ROI? I know when we've worked for somebody in the past that was very much in that C, we had to be prepared to present why we wanted to do something, and not just say, hey, this is just a great idea. We had to like think through, or get his help to think through it on, would it make sense? Would it make business sense? So really understanding, how people think through and how to bring the team together. I love that. Is there anything else that you can think of that would be helpful for our LinkedIn audience as we talk through DiSC?
I don't think so, but I know we've got a pretty cool leadership series to promote.
Yeah. So we've been doing DiSC. So like at Celarity. So you and I have done it at other companies, but we did DiSC as at Celarity as a team. So individually, everybody that comes on goes through it to understand, again, yourself. How am I showing up? And then as a team, how do we show up? There is then the opportunity, like you and I, as we looked at our comparisons, there are areas that we are the same, but then there's areas that we're different. So it's super helpful for a team to understand their differences. I had somebody call me the other day saying, hey, can you walk me through like looking at the comparison? Because I'm having a challenge just like sharing my point of view with this person. And we looked at the two DiSCs and it was like, yeah, here's why, because you're looking at things different. What is important to you is different. So if you want the person to hear you, maybe reframe it and give them the information in the way that they're looking at it. And then the overall team, looking at the demographics of the team, because it creates that culture. And if you want to shift the culture, us in HR and recruiting, we haven't used it as a way to screen out people, but we have used it as a way to screen in people. So if somebody if you've got two amazing candidates and there's no like difference really on paper, or everybody feels excited about both of them, but if you look at your team and you're trying to add something to like the DiSC quadrant that you have the least of, like that example, if the team that had 0 I, if they wanted to have somebody that had I in them, and they had two pretty identical candidates, but one had C and one had I, it could be a decision maker to add the I then to the team. So utilizing it like that. And then, so using it that way. And so we've done that at Celarity. We've done it with other companies. And so we have a leadership series that we're kicking off in September through Celarity, and there'll be a way to find out about it at the end. But we did it in the spring. We brought 50 people together where we did DiSC first, and then there's a couple other things that we add on to it. But the feedback was phenomenal. Again, just to understand how you show up, and then looking at other team members, how they show up is super impactful. And Jess, I see you say, I'm a CS, opposite of the two of us. Yes. And Jess, that's why we love working with you, because we call upon you to balance us out. I know, Ashlee, you work super closely with her on a daily basis. You want to talk about that for a quick second, on you and Jess working together as opposites?
Yeah, I worked with Jess actually a few times on a few different kind of projects or presentations. So yeah, I've loved working with Jess. Again, she kind of balances me out with a little bit more of that kind of, detailed thinking, taking a step back. So yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome to have, so we're not all the same for a reason, right? That diversity of thought and how we process through things. So we will share more information. If anybody's interested in having a DiSC taken, you can reach out to me or Ashlee, and we'll make sure we talk through it. So when this wraps in a minute, Jamie will put up that slide for information about the leadership series we have, more about DiSC. Obviously, we've had fun with it over the years, and love that we've got other people that have that know where they're at. We've got a pretty diverse group, actually, with some SI, some C, and high I, and yep, love this. Love the people that are in the chat. So thank you, Ashlee, for being part of this LinkedIn Live talking about DiSC. And I adore working with you. And thank you for bringing your D to my life.
Yep. Thanks for chatting with me. And I guess we've got our little graphic up. There is a QR code for the leadership series if you want more info on that, as well as our email addresses. And feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Thanks for joining us.